Hi Motheo, it's Jody here. I'm 48 and I started saving for retirement about 10 years ago, a little bit more. I used to think I was on track as I had planned to retire at around 65 and then I was going to live off my savings for the rest of my life. I thought maybe 15 more years. Now I'm worried that if I live to 90, it really won't be enough. So can you help me? What are my options?
Welcome to today's episode. We've all fantasized about retirement at some point. Who hasn't dreamed about sitting on beaches elsewhere in the world, putting all the stresses of your 9 to 5 behind you for good? It sounds great, and on paper it may even seem doable. But for many, these dreams are being put on hold. Welcome to Everything Counts. In this bi-weekly podcast series, we're frank about money and the particular discussions we should all be having. How to save it, how to spend it, how to grow it, its pitfalls, and how to make it work for us. On Everything Counts, we'll share the information you need to get your financial ducks in a row. Hello, I'm Motheo Khoaripe, host of Everything Counts. In this episode, we're diving into why many people are putting their retirement dreams on hold. Now, recent surveys reveal that nearly 80% of individuals expect to work beyond the traditional retirement age of 65. That's a staggering statistic that raises important questions about what's driving this particular trend. Joining me to explore this shift and answer Jody's question are two familiar voices from Everything Counts, Kate Robson, co-head of Investec My Investments, and Nicolette Mashile, a award-winning financial literacy author who you also may know as the Financial Bunny. Whether you're approaching retirement or just starting to save for it, this episode is packed with insights that could reshape your financial future. Welcome back to Kate and Nicolette. So let's dive straight into this particular topic, right? Unretirement. We've all been told by financial services providers all the adverts around retirement and how much time you should be putting into making sure you have enough when you retire. But what is unretirement and what's really driving it?
So I think a lot of key drivers, so cost of living. Women specifically are living a lot longer than anticipated, and many people haven't saved enough. Over and above that, a number of people are unretiring after they've retired because that life stage of moving from working full-time into that the retirement years, which doesn't necessarily fulfill the purpose that many people thought it would. So a lot of people are looking for, over and above the income needs, they're looking for purpose in what they do. Playing golf 9 to 5 is not necessarily ticking the box.
And Motheo, I think one of the things I always have a nightmare about, I'm 35 years old and I already know I'm going to unretire. And that's simply because at 35, I haven't started having kids. I look at my home loan. I also started late. So a lot of the things that I should by retirement be done paying for, I'm probably going to have to carry into retirement. If you look at our parents, where they started their lives, how they planned out their finances, assuming they actually did plan it, didn't just happen by circumstance, we've almost pushed it towards a retirement age for many of us. So we find ourselves in that situation that does my reality and my expectation of retirement actually match up? And honestly, if you're going to have an honest conversation with yourself, it probably doesn't. But I think there's also just a large amount of opportunities that are available these days for people to not have to retire. So I think for me, unretiring might really become the norm.
So it's two things for me that I'm hearing from you. In terms of unretirement, it could be that you reach retirement and you just don't have enough to fulfill your lifestyle. But also at the same time, you reach retirement age, you still feel fit enough to do your job and continue and do other things, maybe even pivot into a career you wanted to take earlier on in your life, and you now have that option.
Definitely. I think that there's two pieces. There's one, I better start putting more away now. Being able to start to really plan for retirement now makes sense. Over and above that, for me, I've got people in my team that have unretired and they've added significant value to our business just because of the 45 years worth of experience coming in, being able to add value. I think people are taking their skill set from their sort of core careers and being able to give back into communities at board level. So I do agree with Nicolette that there are there are lots of opportunities for those skills. And I think specifically in South Africa, where we do have a large skill shortage, I think there's an ability to add value into various spaces in our broader economy.
And I must tell you, I once had this conversation in a conference of financial advisors that lifestyle diseases are becoming more and more prevalent. And a lot of us on the types of medical aid that we're on, we actually can't afford it. So it means that money is going to have to come out of pocket. Now imagine what it's going to look like even in retirement. Your medical aid costs are going to be so high. And all of a sudden you're dealing with hip replacements, knee replacements. Then you've got diabetes. Then you've got So I think that's also one of the things that's going to push a lot of people to have to find some sort of income outside of their annuity in retirement.
But we have seen a lot of people withdraw from the two-part retirement system. A lot of people have exercised that option to say, look, I'm going through financial troubles now. I would like to withdraw. How does that affect you when you get to that retirement age?
There's a large majority of our country and the investors in South Africa can't afford to retire, which is obviously one of the pieces driving unretirement. And the more you draw down on your retirement, the less you have to retire on. I think it's really important for people to have a proper think about that 2,000 Rand or 3,000 Rand that is coming out. And if you're doing that every couple of months or every couple of years, what does that do? What does that do for your retirement savings longer term? We certainly haven't seen a lot of drawdowns, but certainly the market has.
Nicolette, what have you seen in terms of the response from people who have the option to withdraw from their retirement?
They can't wait to withdraw again. And I think that's, as you opened up this part of the conversation, you said sometimes people are feeling financial pressure. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Motheo, I wish it was actual financial pressure for everyone. For a lot of people, it's really a new savings vehicle that they have, and they can tap into it when obviously they've accumulated enough money to be able to withdraw. And I think that's the problematic part, is that perhaps maybe there has not been enough education around compounding in our country, because at the end of the day, your retirement savings, really the magical thing there is compound interest. And if you start disturbing that compound interest, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you get to retirement and you start asking the questions of, no, but maybe my financial advisor must have scammed me, or they didn't do the mathematics correctly. And that's because you've disturbed that compounding. And I think many of us don't take that into consideration. So what really is happening is that a lot of people are just waiting. They're waiting in anticipation to be able to withdraw from their two-part again. They're not thinking about the numbers. They're not thinking about what does it mean when I actually withdraw from my two-part for ultimately what my savings are going to look like. So I think we need to go back to the basics and really educate South Africans on compounding.
So how can somebody match the lifestyle that they're living now when it comes to retirement? So at the time they retire, how do they still live the lavish life, if one can put it that way?
It's redefining what lavish is.
I agree with Nicolette. I think it's about redefining what lavish means and what's realistic. When you're earning a certain amount, to draw that down for a period of time. If you're retiring at 65 and you're going to live until 100, that's 35 years. You need to think about how much in order to draw down the same amount of money that you are earning today, you've got to have put away even more than you're potentially earning. So it's just a maths calc. Let's discount inflation for now. But I think that's really the scary part, is to say that, yes, you may not have as many costs, i.e. sending children to school. Maybe you're lucky enough that when you retire, your children are finished university. But as Nicolette mentioned, medical aid gets more expensive. You've got to think a little bit about retirement homes and where you're potentially going to be living and care. I think for me, engaging with a professional financial advisor to sit down and put a proper retirement plan together with conservative drawdown parameters, time, amount, I think that's really important.
So, Nicolette, then saving for retirement is not just the day-to-day. It's also plussing in the brunches and the things that you like to do, the golf club memberships that you like to do, so that when you get to your retirement, you don't get caught out in terms of spending.
Absolutely. I think it's also just understanding what type of life you want to actually have. But realistically, I think many of us, and I guess it's also the examples that are around us. If you look around, I look around me, and retirement for my people is moving back into your child's home. You create a retirement out of them. And that's also what makes it so difficult for people to grasp the idea that if you want to live a certain way in retirement, you've got to start planning it for it now. And you need to start putting that money away now. You need to start making those discretionary investments now. And I think it's because when they look at the people currently around them that are retiring, it looks like it's easy. Just move in with your kid, become the babysitter, and life moves on. But I think realistically that even that option might no longer be available for many of us. And that's why it's important now to start thinking about it's not just waking up every day, eating a meal, and then going back to sleep. It's you want to go on holidays. You want to be able to go to brunch with your friends. It's the golden years, and they need to be golden. You know what I mean? So I think, many of us should really invest in the value of financial planning advice. Not enough of us are going to financial advisors. I don't know. And I think the value of financial advice is so difficult to quantify in the now. I always use this example. If you are ill, you go to the doctor, writes you a script, you get your medication from the pharmacy, you drink it, and possibly within 2 or 3 days you become better. So the value is transferred almost immediately. Whereas with advice, it's almost like this person is giving you a promise that if you do this and you do it correctly and is backing it up with the numbers, this is what's going to possibly come out. But many of us don't have that foresight to be able to see it. So we undermine the value of advising. And I think it's so important because it will help you plan your affairs a little bit better.
Let's talk about then what unretirement looks like. It's not necessarily going back to a 9-to-5 job. You've earned all this experience. Sometimes you're an industry lead and you get to retirement age, but the working world could be a bit different for you. And the plus, I guess, would be that you still be financially independent.
Yeah, definitely. I think COVID allowed a very different way of doing things. I think there's an opportunity to potentially live out your fantasy from a retirement perspective near the sea and potentially consult back. But I definitely think there's a number of opportunities. But then again, I think we also see in the South African economy, we see a number of people coming back to 9-to-5s just because of their experience, their expertise, and an opportunity for people to bring a skill set back into the market that they would have otherwise lost. So I think there's a number of opportunities. But again, to Nicolette's point earlier, is around you do want those to be your golden years as well. But I think it's managing your needs, managing what you have to do versus what is nice to have.
I think the opportunities to unretire are so great. Kate also spoke about board seats. People are going into board seats. They're consulting. They're writing books. They are all of a sudden they're cooking on Instagram and TikTok. And so it's fantastic to see them be able to bounce back into something that they really enjoy, but that also brings in a little bit of money. So I think that for me is quite exciting that there are those opportunities and they're available. And I think the digital space has made it so much easier for many of us. Even if you take away the retirees or those who are unretiring, but even just ordinary South Africans who are still in the working age, many of us are no longer in traditional 9-to-5. We're finding opportunities in the gig economy, and that shows you that there's a new way of thinking of working. The world of working has to be rethought in a different manner altogether. And ultimately that, obviously the consequence of that is that you're going to earn money also from different sources, which means that now more than ever, it is actually pertinent for you to be able to sit with somebody who can help you map out how do you become tax efficient? How do you make that money go the long way? Considering the fact that there is a little bit of uncertainty in it, but the possibilities are endless.
So it's not all doom and gloom. And on that positive note, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Kate and Nicolette will unpack some of the practical tips when it comes to taxation changes, planning from a financial point of view, and they'll reveal the key ways to keep your retirement plans on track.
From disciplined saving to strategic investing, your Investec private banker and financial advisor are by your side. Real partnership, real progress. Now that's private banking.
Welcome back to Everything Counts. We're going to come to the secrets to staying on track in your retirement planning. But before we get there, I'd just like to know, when re-entering the workforce, in whatever way that may be, you'll be bringing in some sort of income, whether that's part-time, full-time, or freelance. in unretirement, you will be working, you'll be putting in the hours, and you'll be paid, right? Do you still need to keep those good habits of having a financial advisor and still saving for retirement even at that age?
Yes, definitely. So I think we all think that once we reach the age of 65, that somehow the tax man goes away. But from an income point of view, obviously when you re-enter the workforce in whatever shape or form, whether it be consulting, a board seat, a 9 to 5, you obviously are going to be taxed again. I think really importantly at this stage, again, it's a really good time to re-engage your financial advisor. Nicolette spoke earlier around going to the doctor, getting a script. This is potentially your update from a health check perspective around this is what I'm earning. As you're earning, you're hopefully going to be putting more away from a retirement point of view.
I think a financial advisor is probably going to be even more important in retirement because we don't have that date. When we are pre-retirement, we have the date. We have like when I reach 65. Now you don't. Now it's like I'm not really sure when death is going to come knocking. So I could live 30 years after retiring. I could live 5. You don't know. So you always have to guard against any type of uncertainty.
You've both spoken about tax when it comes to the lump sum, the payout, but why am I still being taxed? And does that tax actually come in? What threshold are you at? I mean, when you have that sort of experience, you probably earning quite a bit.
Obviously at that age, depending on what you're doing, you're more than likely being taxed at a pay-as-you-earn level. So very similar to what you would be taxed at when you're working from a full-time point of view. When you retire, at the date of retirement, there's obviously certain product rules around retirement savings, being able to move retirement savings into living annuities and other products. There's often some tax efficiency that comes with that. So even though you're being taxed on your earnings, you may be able to create some level of tax efficiency through sitting down with a financial advisor and understanding, do you pay off your bond, for example, with that lump sum? Do you start a business? Typically, when you sit down with a financial advisor, you look at time horizon, risk appetite, etc. And when you don't know what that time horizon is, your planning conversation from a financial planning point of view also potentially changes to that of estate planning. So what happens to leaving a legacy behind, beneficiaries, tax from an estate perspective, do you have enough life cover in place? So there are a number of different pieces to that conversation. So every time you meet with your financial advisor, we often talk about life stage change. And any time something in your life changes, there's always a really good sort of trigger point for you to have that conversation or to go for your health check.
And I think from a tax perspective, you probably need also over and above your financial advisor is somebody who's going to help you look at your tax affairs. Traditionally, when you are in employment, a lot of stuff actually gets done for you. But when you are in retirement, you're now all of a sudden on your own. So things like, for instance, medical tax credits, you almost have to understand what they are for you to be able to benefit from that rebate. There's interest exemption from your interest income, capital gains tax, don't sell everything in 1 year. So I think it's really, really important to understand that on one side, it's the tax efficiency that you need to find, but the other side is also understanding what type of rebates, exclusions, exemptions you can get so that you try and bring that tax liability as low as possible. No
one ever imagines that they'll outlive their retirement funds, right? But that is a big reality. You live 20, 30 years after retirement. What does an investment look like at that particular point? Making sure that you're still putting away a bit of money that could benefit you years into retirement.
The core principles of money management or what we refer to as your investment journey doesn't typically change once you are post-retirement. So making sure that you've got emergency savings while you're earning income, and once you stop and maybe restart earning income is to continue to put money away. At the end of the day, if you run out, you run out. And I think that's why we keep harping on around these principles of start as soon as you can. Don't draw down on your two-pot. Try and put away as much as you can. Change some of your spending habits, match your assets and liabilities around sort of what do I need in 20, 30 years' time versus what have I got today. So those money management investment principles, they continue through life. And every time you have a life stage change, it's really good to re-engage and make sure that you've got your plan and you're sticking to your plan.
I want to leave our listeners with some key points around keeping your retirement plans in check before we get to unretirement, or those that don't want to be involved in unretirement, where you get to retirement and just walk away with your lump sum. But how do you make sure you've done well enough for yourself that you're at ease when you get to that point?
Do the retirement calculator. So I'm always shocked at how much people don't realize they have a shortfall. Like, myself included. And I think maybe it's a difficult thing to do.
Is it a matter of us looking away and hoping for the best?
You know you don't contribute enough. You know what I mean? I think in your heart of hearts, you kind of know. But there are people who don't know, right? Because there's also this illusion of, and I think it comes down to when you're starting a new job and you sit down with HR and they explain the employee benefits to you, we almost think we are outsourcing that entire financial planning to HR.
Someone else will handle it.
Yeah, it's not my problem. They told me I'll have enough money in retirement, so I believe it. So you just keep going like that. You never stop at a time to say, let me actually check if I have enough money. Am I saving enough money? Should I be doing those voluntary contributions, right? And when you're young, and I mean, I did it when I was young, they showed me the breakdown and they're like, oh, if you contribute this much, this is your take home. If you contribute, and the take home seemed so small if I contributed more to retirement. So obviously my choice was like, don't worry, put it in my bank accounts. I'll make the decisions myself. And I never did, you know? So I think there is that level of keep our heads down, don't have to think about retirement, and just hope that some miracle is going to happen when you start retiring. I would say get a financial advisor, an external one from your employment, so that they can look at your affairs, tell you if you're on the right course. I think to be given that assurance is by going to speak to financial advisors so that you know that you do have the time, you can take a little bit more risk with your retirement. So go into something a little bit more different. And then what do I do with my discretionary investments also is that you can actually help right now, take advantage of compounding with what you are saving for, yeah.
Kate, we're not all going to win the lotto. How do we make sure we keep doing the hard work of putting away the money long enough for us to be at least a bit relaxed when it comes to retirement?
I think don't outsource your retirement to your employer. The one tip, and I mean, I speak about this a lot, is every year when you get that percentage increase, instead of buying something, rather increase your percentage contribution to your retirement fund. You don't feel the pain in your take-home pay, or it feels less painful. But that is really one of those really important tricks. And for many of you that work with corporates, a lot of corporates will match a percentage of what you contribute. So you could be getting an extra 1 or 2% contribution from a retirement annuity perspective. Make sure you have an emergency savings. Try not draw down on that two-pot. Rather use your emergency savings for those emergency savings versus using your retirement money. And then again, make it your business or make it your responsibility around ensuring that as you would go to a doctor for your health needs, that your financial needs are being looked after by someone.
Well, sounds like a solid plan. Again, some great gems from Kate and Nicolette. Thank you again for joining us on Everything Counts. In the meantime, you could send your questions to us using the hashtag Everything Counts. We'll see you in a fortnight.
The views expressed are those of the contributors at the time of publication and do not necessarily represent the views of the firm and should not be taken as advice or recommendations. Investec Private Banking, a division of Investec Bank Limited, a registered credit provider committed to the Code of Banking Practice as regulated by the Ombudsman for Banking Services.